Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a truly massive historical mystery. We're going to be unpacking a text called the Mutus Liber, which literally translates to the mute book. Published way back in 1677, this thing is completely devoid of words. It's an alchemical manual conveyed entirely through these cryptic, deeply symbolic engravings. And we're going to focus all our attention on one of its most profound, mind-bending pages, Plate 11.
Right off the bat, this brings us to a pretty compelling question. When we look at these intense, old alchemical drawings, are we just looking at a 17th century chemical recipe? Or is it something much, much bigger? A hidden map to human enlightenment, maybe? As we'll see today, for the alchemists, there actually was no strict separation between the physical world and the spiritual one. They genuinely believed that by manipulating matter in a glass flask, they were literally transforming themselves.
Okay, so let's dive into it. This is our map for today, Plate 11 of the Mutus Liber. Now, I know at first glance it kind of looks like a chaotic dreamscape, right? You've got angels, soaring birds, people praying next to a brick tower. But this is actually an incredibly precise diagram. Think of this image like a giant onion. Together, we're going to peel back its layers, moving from its basic visual structure all the way down to its deepest philosophical secrets.
Section 1. The Visual Unveiling. 3 Registers of Mystery.
To really understand this workspace, we have to recognize how the artist deliberately divided the action into 3 vertical zones. First, notice the upper register, framing the top with drawn curtains and celestial angels. Just below that is the middle register, featuring an earthly brick furnace and a praying couple. And finally, tucked away at the very bottom, we have the lower register, featuring the mythological figure of Mercury and a radiant child. Let's break down each of these zones, starting right at the top.
What's really fascinating about this top section is that rich drapery being pulled back. In Hermetic iconography, this represents the velum templi, or the sacred canopy. Opening these curtains signifies lifting the veil of Isis, basically revealing nature's innermost arcana to the initiate. And beneath this lifted veil, we see winged angels directly supporting 4 glass phials, or matrasses. If you look closely inside these vessels, we can actually see a sublimation gradient. That's the philosophical vapor rising and descending in advancing stages of luminous clarity.
Moving down, let's see how this builds into the middle register. Here, we find the adept and his female counterpart, the Soror Mystica, positioned around a central brick furnace. But pay close attention to their body language here. They aren't sweating over a hot fire or doing grueling manual lab labor. They are kneeling in pure devotional contemplation. They're tending the heating apparatus with absolute, seamless synchronization. It demonstrates what alchemists called regimen ignis, which is a total, almost effortless mastery of the fire.
Anchoring the entire image at the bottom is the lower register. Here we find the winged figure of Hermes, or Mercury, hovering with his caduceus. That's the staff with the balanced servants, and he's blessing the process. And right beneath him, a radiant, crowned infant, completely bathed in light. You know, in earlier plates of this book, the chemical matter was actually depicted as suffering or even being devoured. But here, the matter has survived the second dissolution. It is mature, it's triumphant, and it's entering its absolute final stages of perfection. Lens 1. Physical laboratory alchemy. All right, so we have our visual map. Now let's peel back our first conceptual layer. Plate 11 actually represents a highly advanced physical process known as the higher cohobation. It boils down to 3 main steps. First, distillation, where the liquid spirit evaporates. Second, cohobation, where that evaporated spirit is carefully collected and then repeatedly returned to its fixed, solid base at the bottom of the flask. Honestly, doing this in a 17th century brick oven without blowing up your entire laboratory was a miracle in itself. So why risk it? Well, for the third step, multiplication of power. In classical spicturism, every completed rotation of this cycle was believed to increase the medicinal potency of the tincture exponentially. We're talking 10 times more powerful with every single cycle. And this brilliantly illustrates a major chemical transition. Earlier in the Mutus Liber, the alchemists achieved the snow-white phase known as the albedo. But Plate 11? This marks the aggressive transition toward the citronitis and the ruby-red phase called the rubido. Through that continuous cohobation we were just talking about, the physical chemical matter is finally becoming fixed. That means it can now withstand incredibly intense heat without just evaporating away.
Now, you might be wondering, if this is all about hardcore physical chemistry, what are literal angels doing holding the glass flasks? Well, to a 17th century chemist, these angels absolutely weren't just religious decoration. They symbolized unseen atmospheric, magnetic, and subtle volatile forces.
The alchemists recognized that during these long-term, slow-heat chemical digestions, invisible environmental forces were acting as absolutely crucial catalysts in the transformation of matter.
Lens 2. Jungian psychological alchemy.
Decades later, Carl Jung realized these bizarre diagrams were actually perfect allegories for the human mind. The absolutely crucial point here is his definition of autonomous archetypes. Jung believed that the angels holding the vessels actually represent deep innate energies within our collective unconscious. See, when an individual goes through immense psychological transformation, the conscious ego often feels completely overwhelmed. So the presence of these angels signifies that you aren't doing the healing alone. There are deep, innate archetypal structures within the psyche actively stepping in to assist in stabilizing your mind. When we juxtapose these two views side by side, the brilliance of the image really shines through. Over in the laboratory, the alchemist is physically refining matter to create the philosopher's stone. But psychologically, that radiant crowned infant at the bottom of the page represents the birth of the individuated self. It is the human psyche, having survived the intense fires of deep internal work, emerging resilient, radiant, and finally completely free from past neuroses and traumas. And remember those drawn curtains at the top of the image we talked about earlier? Well, through a psychological lens, the lifting of the velum templi represents the lifting of the ego's veil. It's that breakthrough moment when the practitioner shatters their own cognitive defensiveness. By pulling back the heavy, blinding curtains of our daily, ego-driven worries, we achieve a direct, lucid awareness of the higher, transpersonal self. It's a real game changer.
Lens 3. Hermetic philosophy and sacred liturgy.
To truly understand the creators of the Mutus Liber, we have to step inside their worldview. This maxim right here captures the absolute essence of Hermetic philosophy. Pray, read, reread, work, and you shall find. It's the concept of labora et ora, work and pray. Notice how the couple at the furnace are kneeling? For them, laboratory chemistry was not some secular technology or a sterile 9-to-5 job. It was a deeply sacred, liturgical act designed to align human will directly with cosmic law.
So when we pull back and view Plate 11 as a unified whole, we see celestial angels and earthly brick sharing the exact same space. This demonstrates the core Hermetic realization, the literal union of heaven and earth. To the alchemist, the physical universe wasn't just dead, inert matter. It was the literal, tangible incarnation of divine light. Which leaves us with a pretty provocative thought to end on today. In our relentless quest for objective, secular technology, did modern science lose the sacred container that the alchemists possessed? By entirely separating the observer from the experiment, by severing spirit from matter, have we been left with a fractured worldview? Plate 11 of the Mutus Liber stands as a beautiful, silent reminder of a time when manipulating chemical matter was fundamentally intertwined with the pursuit of spiritual perfection. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I highly encourage you to keep peeling back the layers of these fascinating historical mysteries on your own.